What if the most powerful country on Earth was once left behind by the Industrial Revolution? In the 1800s, China was still one of the richest civilizations on the planet. It had invented paper, printing, the compass, and even gunpowder. It led global trade routes and called itself the Middle Kingdom, believing it stood at the center of the world. But then something shifted. While China remained rooted in tradition, Europe and America ignited a chain reaction. Science, machines, factories, and weapons. The West industrialized, and global power began to tilt. By the mid-19th century, China was in decline. It had missed the industrial boom. Its economy fell behind. And when the West came knocking with iron ships and cannons, China couldn't compete. It lost wars, it lost land. Hong Kong was handed over to Britain. And slowly, the once mighty empire crumbled. By the 20th century, things only got worse. China was invaded by Japan, occupied by foreign armies, and torn apart by civil war. After World War II, while the West rebuilt through capitalism, China went in the opposite direction, embracing communism under Mao Zedong. But Mao's vision brought chaos. The Great Leap Forward led to famine. The Cultural Revolution destroyed institutions. Science, trade, and education were paralyzed. By 1976, when Mao died, China was a closed country, gripped by poverty and decades behind the rest of the world. Its population was vast, its resources immense, but its economy less than 2% of global output. And yet, everything was about to change. And if you enjoy stories like this, deep, global, and economic, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot and motivates us to keep creating content just like this. In 1978, a new leader stepped in, Deng Xiaoping. He didn't look like a revolutionary, but what he did was revolutionary. Deng knew China was broken. Decades of isolation had left the country starving, stagnant, and far behind. So he made a bold move. It doesn't matter whether a cat is black or white, he said, as long as it catches mice. It was a quiet admission that ideology alone couldn't feed a nation. Instead of pushing full capitalism, Deng introduced something different. Socialism with Chinese characteristics, a delicate blend of state control and free market reforms. But he didn't risk the entire country at once. He started small, in a sleepy fishing village across the border from British-controlled Hong Kong. The name of that town? Shenzhen. At the time, Shenzhen had about 30,000 people, rice fields, and dirt roads. Deng designated it a special economic zone where foreign companies could invest, hire locals, and operate with fewer restrictions. It was a gamble. China was still communist. But in Shenzhen, capitalism was quietly being tested, and the results were explosive. Within a decade, Shenzhen transformed into a manufacturing powerhouse. Factories sprouted overnight, highways were paved, the population soared, jobs multiplied, incomes grew, foreign capital poured in. Other regions took notice. The model expanded. New economic zones opened across the country, in Guangzhou, Xiamen, Zhuhai, Shanghai. China, once shut off from the world, was now opening fast. Global companies saw opportunity. Cheap labor, massive scale, and improving infrastructure made China the ideal place to produce everything. By the end of the 1980s, a quiet economic miracle was underway. But what came next would shake the world economy. By the 1990s, China had found its formula: open the door just enough for capital to flow in, keep labor cheap, keep regulations low, and let the factories multiply. It worked faster than anyone expected. American and European companies rushed in. Nike, Apple, General Motors, Samsung, they all wanted a piece of China's vast workforce and low production costs. China offered something no one else could: scale, thousands of workers, entire cities built around single industries, supply chains so efficient they could ship a product around the world in days. Wages were low, productivity was rising, and the government was all in, building roads, ports, power plants, and railways at breathtaking speed. China didn't just join globalization, it supercharged it. Between 1990 and 2008, China's exports grew tenfold. The country went from barely participating in world trade to dominating it. It joined the World Trade Organization in 2001. From that moment on, it wasn't just part of the global economy, it was critical to it. Manufacturing jobs left the West. They landed in cities like Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and Suzhou. Entire industries shifted. If you bought a TV, a phone, a computer, or a toy in the 2000s, odds are it was made in China. By 2008, China had become the second largest economy in the world, behind only the United States. But that rise came at a cost to others and to China itself. By 2008, China was no longer just rising, it was reshaping the global economy. Hundreds of millions had escaped poverty. Entire cities had emerged from farmland. The Chinese middle class was booming, but elsewhere, cracks were forming. In the United States and Europe, workers in manufacturing cities started feeling left behind. The jobs that once powered Detroit, Manchester, and the Rust Belt were now in Shenzhen and Shanghai. It wasn't just perception, it was in the data. One chart captured this shift better than any other. Economists called it the elephant graph. It looks like an elephant raising its trunk, but behind the shape lies a story of inequality. On the horizontal axis, everyone on Earth ranked by income, from the poorest at the bottom to the richest at the top. On the vertical axis, how much each group's income grew between 1988 and 2013, the golden age of globalization. At the base, the world's poorest saw their incomes rise by over 75%. That's good news, the sign that billions were climbing out of extreme poverty. But the biggest leap happened in the middle, among the emerging global middle class. This is where China sits. Incomes grew by more than 125%, a miracle by any measure. Then the trunk dips. People in the 70th to 90th percentile, mostly the Western middle class, saw little or no income growth. Some even lost ground. These were factory workers, technicians, and low-skill laborers in rich countries, replaced by cheaper labor abroad. And finally, at the very top, the trunk shoots up again. The richest 1%, corporate shareholders, CEOs, investors, saw their incomes triple. Globalization lifted billions, but it also widened the gap between nations and within them. And China, it was right at the center of it all, not just riding the wave, but driving it. By the 2020s, China had transformed itself from a rural backwater into an industrial titan. But that speed came with a price, and the planet is still paying it. Factories ran day and night. Coal-powered cities, highways and skyscrapers rose overnight. But so did pollution. Today, China is the world's largest emitter of CO2, more than the US and Europe combined. Air quality in major cities became a crisis. Rivers were poisoned, forests cleared, and the ecological damage spread far beyond China's borders. But it wasn't just about the environment. After decades of rapid growth, China began facing new economic challenges. Wages had risen. The labor advantage was shrinking. Companies started looking elsewhere, to Vietnam, India, Bangladesh. At the same time, China's population began to age. For the first time in modern history, the workforce started to shrink, and with it, the pressure on the economy grew. Add to that, trade tensions, rising debt, a slowing property market, and growing global skepticism about overdependence on Chinese supply chains, and the miracle started to lose momentum. China was no longer the cheap factory of the world. It was something else now, a global power with global responsibilities and global consequences. Its next phase would no longer be about catching up, but about surviving the system it helped build. China's rise wasn't just about factories or cheap labor. It was about strategy, patience, and knowing when to bend without breaking. While others raced ahead, China waited, and, when the time was right, it moved faster than anyone thought possible. But power always comes at a price. The same system that lifted hundreds of millions out of poverty also deepened inequality, strained the planet, and exposed the fragility of global interdependence. Now, China stands at a crossroads, no longer the underdog, no longer invisible, but with the eyes of the world watching what comes next. And just like every empire built on expansion eventually collapses, a nation built on restraint endures. If you found this story insightful, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more content like this. Thanks for watching.